in the air.
Okay.
Heads or tails?
Heads.
Tails.
You're up, bud.
You called heads. It's you. You lost.
So if I lose, I have to do the intro?
Right.
But I feel like doing the intro is the best part.
No.
You don't want to do the intro.
Correct.
Okay, so it's my turn to do the intro.
No.
So what are we doing?
You lost.
I lost, so I do the intro?
Correct.
Instead of you doing the intro.
That is how it worked with rock, paper, scissors. That's how it works now.
So whoever loses does the intro.
Correct.
Not whoever wins.
Correct.
Hi, welcome to Gentlemen and Whiskey. Today, we're going to be having a nice conversation about how to do a tasting. This is not necessarily in a group. This can be just you by yourself. But this is how we, as a group, run our tastings, how we would do multiple bottles especially, how to have the best result from those tastings in our experience, and how to not necessarily lose your palate, lose your taste, and lose your friendships based on how you do those tastings.
So we have a little bit of experience doing tastings not only with ourselves. We've also done whiskey tastings with a group of 8+ people at this point. So we have a little bit of experience that we want to pass on to you. So we will be giving you 5 tips to doing a whiskey tasting. Mm-hmm. And these are just tips that we've come across with the things that we've found during our tastings, during our 10 months of doing group tastings and our own individual tastings and our YouTube tastings. Okay, so we're going to go through 5 tips. Yep. Tip number 1, we like to do tastings that are alike bottles. So our most recent one was Rise. We've done Buffalo Trace versus single barrels.
Right.
We've done cheap bottles. We've done scotches. We've done Japanese whiskey. We've done high proof bottles. We like to keep things that we're tasting alike. We like to keep proofs similar. We like to keep types similar. We don't want to just go, hey, I'm going to throw this scotch into these cheap bottles. We made that mistake the first time, and that is not a mistake that we made in the past.
So, as a tip, that just means find a theme. If you like one certain thing, you can choose that as a theme, but also branch out. Try to stretch yourself. Try to do something that you haven't necessarily done before personally, but that choose one theme for all of the bottles that you do. So whether that is price, whether that is proof, whether that is the distiller, or maybe even just one type of whiskey but different barrel picks. We've done that in the past. But find some theme that you can kind of narrow it back, because that also gives you something to measure back to.
Also, when you do those, if you're not doing blind, so we have done some blind bashes where we have groups who pick bottles and then we do blind so that we take any bias out of it. If you are not doing that, do your best to arrange by proof so that proof doesn't wash out certain whiskeys.
Yes.
If you do a barrel proof in front of like an 80 proofer like Basil Hayden's, that barrel proofer is going to taste like straight up water. It's just going to happen. So arrange by proof whenever possible, and if you're doing blind, make sure you're doing proofs that are similar or Rise or anything that's going to skew your taste. Keep it similar.
Right. Yep.
Find what glassware you like. We usually use Glencairns because they are relatively inexpensive. You know, Nate has a set of New Orleans glasses, but they're what, like $30 for 2 of them?
Expensive.
Glencairns are like, if you get a pack of 12, they're less than $6 a piece.
It does make a difference, and that's something that we will probably cover on a future video.
Yes.
But we would say make sure that the glassware is consistent, and it does make a difference how you flavor. We're not saying that any one of them is necessarily better than another one, because there are differences. There are sometimes where rocks glasses are better. There are sometimes where New Orleans or Glencairns are better, depending on what your tasting is focusing on. But what we're saying is that between all of them, make sure that the glassware is consistent. Now, that does mean that if you're doing multiple bottles, you either should clean out the glassware in between your bottles, or have multiples of the same kind of glassware. That's why we like Glencairns, because they're kind of standardized. So if you buy a box of Glencairns, they're going to be the same. That's what we use at the tasting. Like he said, you can pick them up inexpensively. So when you've got a group like ours that ranges from 8 to 15 people, it is important to keep them all the same because it does change the flavor of the whiskey.
You can obviously use whatever you want. If you
Right.
add ice, if you add water, those are different things. I would say just try and keep it consistent.
Right.
Otherwise, your group is not going to get similar
Tasting results.
Sure. Or you are not going to get similar tasting results if you're just doing it by yourself.
Now, that's also to say, though, if you don't have Glencairns, and maybe you don't have the budget to buy a bunch of Glencairns for a bunch of guys or whatever, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do whiskey tastings.
Correct.
Use what you have. Because I think for us, both of us would say that the camaraderie and everything that has come from the whiskey tasting group is more important than how we tasted it or what we tasted or even the whiskey or anything like that. Like, you don't have to wait until you save up to get Glencairns to start your whiskey tasting group. You don't have to wait until you make that financial investment. If you don't have it, if you have plastic Dixie cups in the cupboard, use those.
So point number 3, when we do tastings, to keep things as scientific as possible, because you want to keep your results as recreatable as possible. You want to be able to recreate your results in a scientific manner. If that's what you're going for, then I would recommend 3 highly. Do your tasting, then do your drinking. So what I mean by that is when you do your tasting, do a small amount of alcohol. Don't do super pours, whether it's in a rocks glass. Keep it to 1 finger. If it's in a Glencairn, I always keep it below the out part of the bulb. Keep your pours small so that you can enjoy the whiskey if you're doing 2, 3, 4 different tastings.
You can do heavier pours if you have smaller numbers of bottles. That's what we found. If you're doing, let's say, 2 bottles, like head to head, then you can have the pours a little heavier. If you're doing 3, 4, 5 bottles against each other head to head, keep those pours small for the start. That's not to say that if you want to, you can't pour more. That's the best part about glasses is you can always refill them. But when you're actually doing the tastings, keep the pours small so that your head stays in it, your palate stays in it. That's a big part. And you're just able to make those decisions on what you like, what flavors you're tasting and stuff that way. And one is not necessarily overwhelming the next one because you're so full of it. I would say as a whole, our whiskey tasting group figures out which one of the bottles they liked the most specifically, and usually each member of our group pours a little bit more of that specific whiskey at the end of it when we're just hanging out, when we're doing the part where it's just us chilling with a glass of whiskey, and then you get to choose what you like. But when you're actually trying to figure out what you like, you don't want to necessarily overwhelm one with another.
I think tip number 4 would be a good version of pace yourself. When you're doing that, take time between your tastings. Enjoy some crackers or some pretzels, something with not a lot of flavor, but the ability to cleanse your palate. Do like pound water between your tastings, and that's going to keep more scientific results.
We don't necessarily ever have a tasting where we don't have some kind of cracker or bland snack available to guys, because a lot of these tastings also happen after guys get off work.
Yep.
Are coming straight from there, maybe haven't eaten dinner or something like that. And so to not get super turnt on your first glass or whatever that you drink, it's a good idea. Just keep yourself within your limits. You know your limits, make sure you stay within them.
Yep. We also recommend you eat dinner before or during. Some of our guys get DoorDash straight to the house when we do these tastings. But I would very much recommend pace yourself. And then number 5, enjoy your results. This is how tastings are how you decide what you actually like. Right. Just enjoying something when you're at home by yourself, you can figure out what you like. But this is putting things head to head. So you may like ryes, but do you like Rittenhouse? Mm-hmm. Do you like Wild Turkey 101 rye? Do you like Pikesville? What do you like? That's figuring that out and narrowing down the results, because you're putting similar things head to head and you're figuring out of those, which do you like.
Now here's the other thing I would say about that is don't go into a tasting with expectations about what you're going to like. The whole point of the tasting is to figure out what you're going to like. You might find something new that you enjoy. I think every member of our group has found 1, 2, maybe even more things that they didn't know that they liked before they started tasting with the group, that they found that they liked because of going into it without expectations.
And if you're going to do that, make sure you do a blind tasting.
Correct.
If you know that you like Rise and you think that you like Bullet, do things that are similar to Bullet. Do high rye bourbons together around that. I think it's 92 proof, 90 proof, something like that. You do bourbons around that proof that are high rise to see if you actually do like Bullet or if you just like 92 proof high rye bourbons.
An example of that is a member from our group at our July tasting, which was rye themed, went into the tasting thinking he did not like any rye. He thought that there was no rye whiskey that he enjoyed. However, we tasted, what was it, 4 bottles, 3 bottles?
It was 3 bottles. So
3
we
bottles.
tasted.
One of those he very much enjoyed. He may not have enjoyed the other 2 as much, but he did enjoy one of those. And so that's one of the things that we would say is enjoy it, meaning leave yourself open to enjoy it. Don't necessarily blanket all of your previous experience with whiskey on that direct theme. And also try themes that you thought you didn't like, but try multiple bottles and you might find something new that you didn't know that you liked.
Yeah, I think after every single one of our tastings, somebody has liked one of the bottles enough to go out and buy their own.
Right.
And I think that's really cool. We've helped our group and ourselves discover the things that we like and what we enjoy. So continue to do your tastings, enjoy what you like, broaden your horizons, and we'll see you next time.
I'm Nate.
I'm John.
This has been Gentleman Whiskey.
Cheers.